This week, I'm excited to be talking to a dad surviving divorce. Duane Robert has been navigating a difficult divorce and co parenting relationship for over a decade. He's been sharing his struggles, advice, and stories on YouTube and his own podcast called Dad Surviving Divorce. Duane, hello, and how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, you're out in California, is that right? Or
I am.
Arizona?
No, California.
All right. Well, what's going on in California?
It's actually raining. Well, not today. It was raining yesterday. So we're actually having a little bit of weather, which is kind of unusual for the West lately. So,
Yeah,
but
you're
no, things have been going
spoiled.
good.
You're
Yeah.
spoiled with all that sun out there in California.
Perfect weather.
So tell our listeners a little bit more about you.
Yeah, thanks. So my situation, I've been dealing with this for about a decade, like you said. And I basically started this whole thing because when I was going through my situation, what I found was a complete lack of resources helping people deal with toxic, high conflict divorces when you had kids involved. There's a lot of information for people for just toxic relationships, but nothing whenever you had that special little dynamic of having kids involved in it. So after I kind of got some, I wouldn't say peace, but some stability in my situation, and started to heal myself with working through a therapist and through different research to try to figure out what happened and how to make my life better and how to make my kids' lives better. That's when I decided to create DSD. I kind of shortened the name so it's not just for dads; it's for anybody going through a toxic, high conflict relationship. So my demographics is 50, but basically 50-50 man to women. Some people don't even have children; they're just dealing with high conflict situations and looking for help. And I try to provide some clarity and perspective to help people deal with these situations and to minimize the mistakes that they're doing to try to get their life back faster, to basically help their children navigate this and try to just bring peace back into your life.
Okay, so you stabilized your own situation, which was difficult. And then
Absolutely.
so I'd like to hear more about that. But first let me ask you, why did you decide to go online and start your own kind of, resource for other people?
It's funny you ask that because I personally don't like attention. I'm kind of an introverted person. I don't like being on camera. I don't like having my voice recorded. So to jump into the YouTube, and primarily I'm on YouTube, to jump into that space was absolutely outside of my comfort zone. But the reality is, and like I mentioned before, is there just didn't appear to be a lot of resources that were available for. I'm not say initially I started this primarily focused on men, but quickly realized that the patterns that toxic people do are all very similar. So I mean, the crux behind it is when you're going through this, it is probably the most difficult, emotionally draining, dark days that you'll ever go through. And a lot of the information that's out there, if like you go on to Facebook or whatever, it's really just negative. It's like how everything is going to be horrible. And there's no hope there. There's nothing to really give you a light at the end of the tunnel to say, okay, well, if I follow this, good days are ahead. I mean, the message a lot of times is, it's bad. It's going to get worse. You don't even know what's coming next. And that doesn't help people. I mean, that just basically adds to the stress and the angst, the catastrophic thinking, and just sends you down into the pit of hell. I mean, basically. And that was the whole thing with this. I'm like, if I could provide a resource that helps somebody in their darkest moment, like in my mind, I used to always think my viewer or my client or however you want to describe, my target audience is that person at 2 o'clock in the morning who's lost all hope, who maybe just by the grace of God has typed something into the computer and my silly little channel pops up and gives a message that makes them say, wait a minute, I resonate with this person. I see what they're saying. And maybe there's a possibility that I can achieve some peace and joy and regain my life on the other side of this. And I think that is a very powerful message, and I get messages from people all the time which say just that. It's like, you found me, or I found you at the darkest point of my life, and I'm still here because of it, right? And that's a powerful thing.
That's beautiful. That is beautiful. That's how I found you. It wasn't at 2 a.m., but I did search for resources. I found you on YouTube. I started watching some of your videos, and I was immediately like, it resonated. It stuck with me, and it was enlightening. And so I really want to dive into some of your thoughts and some of your concepts that you have created. But first, tell me a little bit about your difficult divorce and co-parenting with your ex.
So I was married a little over 20 years. And in retrospect, I could, in the back of my mind, I always knew something wasn't quite right, but I was so fixated on the illusion of what I thought the relationship was that I just stuck with it. And it just, I mean, it just slowly wears you down. And one thing I'll just say, excuse me, what I've noticed dealing with people through, I had my channel for about 5 years, a little over 5 years. What I've noticed is people who have long-term relationships like me, who it takes you 2 decades before things completely blow apart. Typically, you come from a troubled family life. I mean, my parents were divorced. It was highly toxic. It was, a lot of parental alienation going on towards my dad. And when you have that experience, it gears you for a long-term toxic relationship. Whereas what I've noticed with people who had really good, solid families, a good example of how relationships are supposed to work, typically their toxic relationships last maybe 2 or 3 years. Now that's enough time to have maybe a kid or two in tow, but that's been my experience is that the people who, when they start looking back at their childhood, they have these childhood wounds, they like to call them, that basically set the stage for this experience. Okay, so anyways, 20 years roll past into it. I finally am realizing that I deserve an opportunity to be happy. The chaos and the emotional games and all the stuff that was going on just got too much to handle anymore. And I'm actually the one in my situation that actually said, okay, let's get a divorce. We tried to do marriage counseling. It didn't work. And I finally said, okay, I can't live like this anymore. Now, the problem is even with that little background, little information or thought in my head that something wasn't right, I still thought I was dealing with a normal, rational, decent human being. I just figured I went left, she went right. And, we just, got married really young. I mean, we got married when I was 19. She was 21, 22. And, I just kind of rationalized it that, okay, we're on different paths, but we're both good people. We both want to be good parents. This will be fine. And then, as you well aware, that when you're dealing with somebody toxic, that's not how it goes. And it turned into a complete nightmare. The divorce got nasty really fast, false allegations, just, every little deep, dark secret that somebody can figure out or even pretend to figure out after 20 years with you was now on paper and being used to try to smear you, or basically try to get me to just capitulate and just give them everything they wanted. And it was just, it was a horrible, it was a horrible situation. I mean, I look back on it now and I laugh, but it was not a laughing matter, and it nearly broke me.
Oh, there's so many similarities. That it got ugly fast. I experienced that as well. Secrets being used, experienced that as well. I'm so sorry that it was so difficult. And I appreciate you sharing your story with us to give us a little context about why you started Dad Surviving Divorce, or DSD. In your experience, is the divorce process and challenges very different for men and women, or is it very similar?
I think there's preconceived notions on how it's going to go for a man and for a woman. What I mean by that is the normal story is, if you're a man, you're going to lose in family court. Family court is biased against a man and it favors the mom. So you're going to lose. Right. And do not, I mean, for anybody listening to this, do not, basically grab the hands of defeat out of potentially the hands of victory. And what I mean by that is when I started my situation, that's what the story I was told. You're not going to get, you're not even going to get 50-50 custody. She's going to get everything. You're going to lose everything. You're going to be living under a bridge in a refrigerator box. You just need to accept it. And I didn't. And I basically said, well, I at least have to try. And I did. And I ultimately was able to achieve 50-50 custody. I mean, it costs a lot of money. And it wasn't automatic, because it started out that I was a horrible person. I was emotionally abusive, all the normal stories. And I had to basically demonstrate that I wasn't those things. I had to get a custody evaluation and all these different things that are expensive to prove that that wasn't really the case. Okay. Now my point is this, on the flip side for women, it's the other thing that can be dangerous is if you go in and you think, okay, well, I'm the mom, so I'm going to win. I'm going to get full custody. Dad's going to get every other weekend and I have nothing to worry about. Well, if you approach it that way, you're probably going to be completely shocked whenever it doesn't go that way, that you potentially end up with 50-50. Or if you really make mistakes and your ex is able to, I guess, catch or get you in a trap and get full custody because they deem you, the mom, being the alienating person or the less stable person. And then the problem I think with that is, if a man doesn't get custody, it's like, oh, okay, well, that's the way the system is. You're the weekend dad, they take all your money. That's normal. If a mom doesn't get custody, people think that, oh my God, what is wrong with this person has to be horrible because moms always get full custody, or at least they get 50-50. So if they're not the primary caregiver, oh my God, what's wrong with that person? And that's not really the case. What I just want to say before we jump past that, in my opinion, the court system is biased against a toxic, narcissistic person because those people are able to manipulate, lie, use falsehoods, or take things out of context without any moral conflict. And the court systems are not set up to deal with that. They're basically set up for people to be honest, to tell the truth, the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. And they're not really set up for people to go in and lie and to mince words and play games. And when somebody is willing to do that, they have an advantage in the court system, and especially in the family court system.
Yeah. So you found that the burden of proof was on you to actually prove that you were capable of having 50-50 instead of the assumption that you were a capable dad and that you deserved 50-50.
Right. Yeah. And the way that played out is, and I just, what I will say is in a lot of areas throughout the world, right? I mean, because I have audience in, obviously the United States and Canada and England and, Australia. I mean, everywhere. It just kind of blows my mind. Some of the people who I interact with through the channel, they are starting that when I say the court systems are starting to look at 50-50 like it should be, that the kids need both parents. So it's not as crazy for 50-50 to be achieved. I mean, I have people on my channel who have worked 2 years to finally get more custody of their kids, more of a timeshare. And it's I think there's a movement to try to push that towards presumptive 50-50. So in other words, you walk into court and unless there is some criminal case ongoing didn't happen 2 days ago, it's 50-50, right? Unless there is some significant reason, then you can fight for getting more time or having the other person have less time. But it doesn't start from that position to where, one person has a majority control. And as most people who are going through this understand, time is money, right? So every day more that you have the kids, that's more money that the other person has to pay, or one person is going to have to pay the other person. Very rarely does it seem that it's just, there's no there's no child support or anything like that. So then on top of everything else, you're dealing with hardly any time with your kids. Your pay is being just, I don't know, I'm going to say crucified, but I mean, just basically sucked up in child support and alimony and court fees and everything. And it makes it really, really tough to try to fight these things. It's not really an even playing field.
And so you describe your YouTube channel as, basically offering hope to those people
Mhm.
who are going through a similar situation, a difficult divorce, possibly a narcissistic ex. And you said that you're in a lot of English speaking countries. I mean, you're pretty much everywhere, but you have a lot of your
Yeah.
viewers, um, your followers in English speaking countries, and also other countries as well,
Oh
or
yeah.
no?
Yeah. I mean, it's really blown my mind. I mean, I've had, you know, yeah, I'm trying to just rattle off the countries. It's almost everywhere, to be honest. I mean, I've in Arabic countries and uh, you know, Eastern Bloc countries. I mean, it's pretty crazy. It kind of blows my mind that in my little niche of California where I'm at, I'm up in the high desert and I'm able to interact with people all over the world. I mean, it's incredible. It's amazing. Oh, I even had one person who's technically stolen my videos, but they've downloaded my videos and they manually superimpose subtitles in their country. I think it's Poland for the videos.
Uh-huh.
And I mean, it's one of those things where I'm just like, sure, dude, go ahead because that's a lot of work. It's
Yeah.
just amazing. Yeah,
They're like, these people need to understand this guy. He's saying some good stuff. That's
yeah.
that's so cool. You must be really proud of what you've done.
It's been a surreal experience. I mean, like I mentioned before, this is nothing I ever thought in a million years that I would do. I'm kind of surprised that after 5 years that I'm still doing it. But I mean, at the end of the day, it's just I understand the pain that people are going through. I understand the conflict that they're going through because I remember it. I mean, I don't have the same visceral reaction that I used to have when I was going through it. But when I hear people's stories and what they're going through, it's like I can connect with what they're feeling. And it's not a pleasant, these are not fun times. I mean, it's not a good topic. I mean, it's a good topic to help people, but I mean, this is, like I mentioned earlier, probably the darkest thing that anyone is ever going to go through.
It's tough
And if I
stuff.
can if I can provide a little bit of light and hope with some actionable items to help you get your life back. I mean, my goal at the end of the day is that you consume the content, it helps you, and then you move on. And maybe I get a note from you later on in life saying, hey, thanks for everything you did. I don't watch anymore because I don't need to, but thanks for helping me get my life back.
Yeah, that's great. It has to feel really rewarding for all the effort it takes, I'm sure, for you to post. How often are you posting?
I don't post as much as I used to. I used to do 3 videos a day plus a live stream. Now, what I kind of do is whenever I mean, I have over 1,000 videos on YouTube with different podcasts and just one-off videos and interviews. And the way I approach it now is whenever there's a topic that I feel passionate about or a question or something that resonates with me that I feel like I could provide some context for, I'll make a video on that. Like the other day I posted a video. It was a reaction, or not a reaction, but in a response to a comment that a person had left, a mom who's dealing with a toxic ex with a 17-year-old child that's being indoctrinated into that fold, and provided some thoughts and approaches to help them deal with that, because it's tough. I mean, your whole life gets ripped apart. You're talking about your child. You're talking about the future of your child, and a lot of times you feel hopeless, and a lot of times if you're reactionary you can ultimately make things worse. Worse for you, worse for the relationship for your child, basically sever that connection that you have with them ultimately. And I mean, the thing at the end of the day, I think what we all hope for is to get our life back and to help our kids not go through the same thing. So anytime we see our children going down the same path, or maybe exhibiting some of the same negative characteristics of the ex, and don't ever say that to your kids, because they are one half of the other person, so you don't want them to feel bad about themselves. But you got to do it in a way to where you can hopefully help them choose the best path forward. Sometimes we win that game, sometimes we don't, but we at least have to try.
Yeah, it's hard not to be reactionary when
It
you're
is
you're
really
in
hard.
such a deep, dark place and you're emotionally taxed and you're hanging on by a thread
Yeah.
and you're not your best self, certainly at that time. So it is hard not to be reactionary. So that's great that you're helping people to hopefully have some kind of foundation to work off of. And as you mentioned, actionable items to kind of bring forth in their situation, which I did want to talk about a couple of those actionable items. I'm curious about something that you call the hybrid no contact concept. Can you tell us more about it? Did you coin the term? Did you develop the
That
strategy?
yeah, and I mean, okay, when I created that, it was something I came up with. I had not found any other resource on it. I know like Bill Yeti, who's a therapist, has come up with the BIF concept, and I'm sure there's some others out there. But for me at the time, when I finally realized what I was dealing with, it was through a therapist who said, I can't diagnose your ex, but it really seems like you are a person who's dealt with this. It's basically somebody, you're exhibiting the behaviors of somebody who has dealt with a person who has narcissistic personality disorder. And my therapist was like, I'm not diagnosing, I can't diagnose, but this is what I think you're dealing with. This is how you're acting, and we're going to approach it that way. And that was a real game changer for me on that. So when I started doing research about NPD and the cluster B, the personality disorders, one of the terms and the concepts that just kept coming up over and over again is no contact, go no contact, go no contact. And at one point I tried it. I'm like, okay, all right, I'll go no contact. So I stopped reaching out to the ex. I stopped, trying to engage in conversation with her. And what I quickly found out after about 2 months, as soon as she realized, hey, wait a minute, you're not chasing me anymore, then she started coming back at me and, basically trying to create conversation. And I'm like, oh crap, this isn't going to work. I mean, if you're not communicating, that's a problem. And if you're in middle of litigation, at the time I wasn't, but I mean, if you're in the middle of litigation, you can't go no contact because it will absolutely be used against you. So I'm like, okay, well, there's got to be a hybrid concept. Hence, I mean, really genius marketing here, right? Hybrid no contact. And that's how I came up with that. And that's what I started doing. It's like, okay, I will only respond to things that have to do with the kids. And what I mean by that is, okay, so let me just, the idea of a hybrid no contact is really evaluating what exactly it is you need to say or communicate with your ex. For instance, you get the email that says, hello, you piece of garbage human being who is a horrible parent and, does all these things wrong and blah, blah, blah. You get this 3-page diatribe that's telling you what a piece of garbage you are. Everyone listening right now to your show, more than likely, if they've gotten that, and if they're unfortunately, if they're listening to my stuff, that's normally the reason why, you are experiencing this. You go through and you systematically address every point, every point on that thing to explain why it's not true and why they're the other person. The reality is, do that once and realize that it doesn't make any difference. Stop doing it. Read that 3 pages of garbage and look for what exactly is in there that's important. Are they telling you when little Timmy has a doctor's appointment? Are they asking you when the next soccer game is? Find that information and just simply say, hi, X, comma, little Timmy's soccer match is at Wednesday at 6:00 on field 3 at the school. Thanks, and in my situation, Duane, right? I mean, and that's it, and ignore everything else. And it's amazing how hard it is for people to do that, because it's like, oh my God, if I ignore it, that means I'm tacitly saying it's true. I have to defend myself. No, you don't, because it's not going to make any difference. You're not going to come up with some amazing written response that causes your ex to go, oh my God, I never realized what I was doing. No, it ain't going to happen. So don't put yourself through it. Focus on what you need to share and just focus on that. And if litigation's done, your court order's solid, I would say you could probably get away with, if they already know the answer, you could just ignore it completely. If you're in the middle of litigation, if you're going back to court, make sure you at least answer the question and provide whatever information so that they can't. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're going to go to court and they're going to say, the ex won't communicate. All I keep doing is trying to ask about little Timmy, and they won't ever answer, right? You don't want to be in that situation, because then it could look like you are being, not willing to co-parent, not willing to work with them. And one thing I just want to say for everyone going through this, the reality is, and I know your app is called Peaceful Co-parenting or Calm Co-parenting. is the reality is with a toxic person, you can't co-parent with them. It's not going to happen. It's just, it's not. You're going to parallel parent with them and you're going to counter parent with them. Basically, you're going to be working on when they do something that hurts the kids, you're going to be trying to mitigate and undo it. But co-parenting with a toxic person is, it's an exercise in frustration. You will beat your head against the wall. And what you will quickly quickly see is that they really don't care about the kids. They care about themselves, and whatever is good for them is what they're going to do. And if it hurts somebody, if it hurts you, they don't care. If it hurts the kids, they don't care. And if it helps anybody, they don't care either. It's really a bizarre way of thinking. And that is
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the short version of hybrid no contact. I do have more videos that go into more examples on my channel about that concept and how to deal with it.
Yeah, we'll put the links to Duane's hybrid no contact video in the show notes. But you,
Thanks.
you mentioned counter parenting. I don't think I've heard of that, but I get what you're saying. You just kind of explained it a little bit.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, I mean, the way it should be and the way the court systems are set up is that you co-parent, right? And here's the reality that most people, I mean, obviously divorces are not happy times, right? I mean, it's the worst part of a relationship when it devolves to that and you have to go through the divorce court. The reality is most people, even if they're angry, will calm down, right? They'll stop. They'll be like, okay, you know what? I don't like this person anymore, but we have kids and we have to basically be friendly for the kids. And, you can come to some common ground. The problem is when you're dealing with somebody who probably has some mental issues, they don't have the ability to do that. And what will happen is the shenanigans that you're dealing with on day one will be the same experience on day, on year 5, year 10, year 20. I've known people who, their kids are at college and the ex is still acting the same way they acted, 15, 20 years ago. I mean, it's crazy the staying power that these people have to stay in that mindset, to stay in that chaos. And they're unwilling to let go of it. And it's crazy because a normal person, they just get emotionally exhausted and tired. And it's like, oh my God, I don't want to do this anymore. But a
Right.
toxic person won't let it go. They won't.
That
They
I
will
know.
just
That
hold
doesn't
on
give me
to it
much
forever.
hope. I'm like, oh
Well,
no. No, I'm kidding. I'm
okay.
teasing you.
No, but
It's the
well,
reality. It is the
well, and the thing
reality.
is what changes is our ability to the way we interact with the person, our
Yes.
perspective, the bait that we don't take anymore. I mean, whenever a nasty comment is made, you ignore it because it doesn't matter anymore, right? And
Yes.
you just you kind of set up a wall to minimize the effect that this other person has to infiltrate or negatively influence your life. Now, is it going to 100%? Is it ever going to go away? Probably not, but it'll get to the point where honestly, what ends up happening is it gets to the point that all the torment and everything that you've experienced ultimately turns out to probably be one of the best things that happens in your life because it forces you to confront the situation. It forces you to dive deep into yourself to really heal those old wounds. And the payoff for that is your life gets so much better. And I know anybody who's listening to this at the beginning stages of is like, better, how the hell is my life going to get better? It's in shambles. I've lost everything. Money's gone, retirement's gone, all these things. Just to anyone listening to this right now, you will have an opportunity to basically re-baseline your life, expunge all the toxic stuff that's been around you, and find peace and have a life that's better than you ever would have expected. And I know that sounds weird for anyone listening to it, but just kind of keep that thought in the back of your mind that, hey, maybe that is possible. Maybe that this crazy guy who's talking right now might be onto something.
Good
And
things
I
can come from difficult situations for sure.
absolutely.
I
And I get
agree
a
with
lot
you.
of comments from people who say just that. They're like, I heard you say that a year ago and now I'm experiencing it. I thought you were a knucklehead. Well, they don't say it that way, but I mean, it's like, I didn't believe it, but holy cow, you're right. And I have some longtime people who have stuck with the channel just to provide that same type of, insight in the comments and on my Discord and everything to people who are going through it. So it's really powerful. It's a really powerful message.
Right, yeah, because I do agree with you that the only person that you can change is yourself. So
Yep.
your point is this other person, whether it's 20 years or 2 months or whatever, is not going to change. And so you can. And so that's like,
Absolutely.
that can be amazing, right? When you change for
Oh
the
yeah,
better
absolutely.
and you
Yeah.
realize you have a lot of power and control over yourself and you can start making good choices. Is that the black hole thinking? So is that
Yeah.
kind of
There,
part of
there,
it where it's like you're really
yeah, there is. And
accepting?
there's three main concepts that I normally go over. First one is like I have a playlist on my YouTube channel called Mindset for Narcissistic Abuse Recovery. The first video is a hybrid no contact video. There's about 35 videos in that series. I just kind of like I picked them to kind of feed off of different topics to help people in the early stages of this. And the next concept is absolute thinking. But you asked me about black hole thinking. The thing about black hole thinking, and again, me and my sarcastic little ideas of coming up with it. It's like when I was going through this, what was driving me crazy was ruminating and thinking about what the ex was doing. And that came in two ways. It came in the wonderful human being friends who would share what was going on. Because at this point, I didn't, we weren't on Facebook together or anything like that. So, you had people telling me what was going on, or the kids basically coming over and saying, daddy, we did this, and this. And when you're having a hard time and, whatever the situation, whether it's money or whether you just don't have time with your kids, and it's like somebody pouring salt into a wound. So what I came up with, or what I had, the issue for me was, okay, I have to stop getting in that vortex of chaos and stop it. And I'm like, okay, a black hole, everything goes in a black hole. You can't see on the other side of it. You can't, if you get too close to it, you'll get sucked into it. So for me, black hole thinking was a concept to whatever's happening on the other side. It doesn't matter. Don't care. Don't want to hear about it. Don't need to know about it. I don't need, people to tell me about it. And it's a way to start to protect yourself from getting wrapped into that chaos, because
Mm-hmm.
it's so easy whenever someone is telling you, oh, did you hear what Bill did? Oh, he's got a new girlfriend, or he bought a motorcycle, or he, whatever the case is. And the problem is that when there's all these other issues going on, it's trigger points for you or for us that doesn't lead to anything good, right? Because immediately you're thinking, well, wait a minute, you can't pay for the schooling stuff, but you can go do this, or you can go on a trip, or you know what I mean? It's like you're
Right.
constantly evaluating it in a way that's not healthy. So the thing is just stop doing it. It's hard to do. It's almost like an addiction. And black hole thinking is a methodology to where you just say, okay, you know what? I don't want to know. I don't need to know. Black hole. And it's just like, try to use those simple concepts so that you can be like, okay, yeah, that's right. That's in the, that's in the black hole. Let's just let it go and, not focus on it. And one of the things I just want to say, and I think this is a problem a lot of people have, especially in early days of a custody dispute and a divorce, is you're really concerned about what the other person is doing with the kids. And the problem is you have zero voice in what's going on. The only way you do is if it's something that's highly illegal and putting your kids' lives in serious danger. But if they're doing something like they're going boating, or they're letting, the new boyfriend with his motorcycle drive the kids around the block. I mean, there's certain things that you just don't have any voice in. And the problem is, or what people have to remember, is a toxic person lives for conflict. They live for chaos. So anytime you pick up the phone, or you pull out the keyboard and go clickety clack and start telling them, hey, don't be doing this or whatever, it provides narcissistic supply for them, because they know they're getting a reaction out of you, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
if you went back to court and said, well, I don't want, Susie to have Billy around. Well, tough. Billy is a human being, and they can do whatever they want. And it's just, I've dealt with men and women who've had that struggle, to where they're so frustrated about what the other house is going on. It's like, look, unless it is your kids' lives are really in danger, don't go down that path, because it's not going to accomplish anything, and it's just going to make things worse. You have to just let that part of it go. And
Mm-hmm.
black hole thinking is a concept to help with that.
It sounds like extreme parallel parenting or something like that. Like, because
Oh yeah.
parallel parenting is kind of like what you're saying. That's
Yep.
in my understanding. You're just kind of not crossing over. You're just doing your own thing. And
Yeah. And
it's,
because the reality is you're not going to have an opportunity. See, the problem for high conflict divorces, and again, anyone listening to this is probably experiencing this, and anyone who hasn't, understand that you're lucky. You cannot even have simple conversations with your ex to say, hey, little Tim, like for instance, in my situation early on, one of my kids was having a hard time in school. And it's like, look, we got to be focused on this. Wouldn't work with me. I'm like, look, I won't even take him overnight. Let me just have him, have our kid for an hour a day just to do the homework, and I'll bring him right back. No, 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 because they don't care. And you're going to basically just beat your head against the wall. I mean, and I had to deal with that with almost all of my kids on the schooling side of it, to the point that I even had to get relationships with the teachers. And a lot of them would say, okay, look, you know what, we'll only count the homework from the time that the kids are with you. Don't worry about what they're not doing with when they're with mom, and we'll just grade that. Now, the sad part is most of those teachers were so frustrated with the ex that they would just, when the ex would say, oh, how are things going? They would be like, oh, everything's great, because they didn't want to deal with her, because it was like, talking to a wall, which didn't help
mm,
me, because anytime I tried, and this is before I knew a lot of these concepts, understood what I was dealing with, anytime I'm trying to have a rational conversation and then someone else, like a teacher, is saying, oh, everything's fine, she's going to think that I'm just being being a knucklehead. So it's
oh,
very frustrating. And
yeah,
again, so it's like you're parallel parenting.
yeah, that's so tough. So, another question for you. What are some major insights you've learned about difficult divorce over the years of talking to people and coaching others? Because that's something else you provide on your website is coaching services. So, anything that stands out that you'd like to share?
I think the main thing is, when you're dealing with this situation, it feels like an immediate crisis, and that you have to just be going 1,000 miles an hour. The first thing you need to understand is this process is slow. Family court is slow, and give yourself time to breathe. A toxic narcissistic person thrives in the chaos, so it's their comfort zone. And if they can get you off kilter, you're more prone to make mistakes. You're more prone to agree to things that maybe you wouldn't really want to, or maybe you'll a year later realize was a mistake. So slow yourself down and realize that this is going to take a while. And this is really tough for people who are currently not seeing their kids, right? Maybe they're seeing their kids zero time. Maybe there's a restraining order. Maybe there's something that's really just pulled the rug out from underneath them. Unfortunately, this is not going to get solved in a day. It's probably not going to get solved in a month. You need to take a breath. You need to be very deliberate about what you're doing, and really think through your next course of action. I
Mm-hmm.
often will use the examples of battles and wars. Probably not a good time right now to use that with what's going on in the world, but you can win a battle and lose the war if you're not really thinking through what you're fighting
Mm-hmm.
or what you're arguing for. So you have to really be deliberate on what your course of action. For example, if you're not seeing your kids and the person has decided unilaterally that your custody is zero, well, you have no choice, and you have to go to court, and you have to fight that, and you have to go through it. And I mean, and even on that, if they get to the point where it's like, well, hey, agree to all this stuff, and we'll let you have an afternoon with the kids. I've known people who've come to my channel after they've agreed to that, and it's the worst thing you can do, because now you have an agreement that you've agreed to, and then when you go back and try to change it, the court is going to say, well, what's the extenuating circumstances of why you want to change it? You agreed to this, you were okay with this, and now you're not okay with it. And it's like, so you need to hold out for the best deal that you can possibly get. Understand that you're probably going to have some missed time, or a lot of missed time with your kids, but you're playing the long game on this, and you want to have that long-term relationship. So you don't want to capitulate to something that ultimately you're going to regret later, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense. And I think when you're going through such a difficult situation and you're sharing with your friends and your family, you are getting a lot of advice from people.
Oh yeah.
And so talking with somebody who's been down that road, they can slow you down and give you some good advice, like take a breath and play the long game. So what other resources are you offering on your website, Duane? You've got your YouTube channel 1,000 videos on there. You've got your coaching services.
Yeah, and I have a podcast called Break the Cycle with DSD, and the other thing I have is a Discord server, DSD Discord server. It's a smaller group, like 400 or 500 people who've been through similar experiences. I got a cadre of folks who've been there, or the old group or the old timers who provide a lot of help. I try to get in there as much as I can, but as we were talking about before, a lot of stuff going on, and it's like I'm spread pretty thin. The other thing people can do, if coaching is not an option, and I don't do that, I have very limited time. I open that up too. There are people who want to specifically talk to me offline. People can send me questions, notes via email, and sometimes I'll turn those I'll either email back, or sometimes I'll even turn it into a video, like I was talking about earlier. The comment question that I received, I basically went through it and basically answered it in a video form for the person. So there's just different ways. I wish I had more time. I mean, I wish this was my day job and I could devote my whole day to it. But unfortunately, I have my other job I have to do. So
Yes, I understand. I saw on your website there's a place that listeners can go and actually record their question to you.
yeah,
And
it's
so
right on
that's
the website. It's a little. There'll be a dialogue box over on I think the right side of the page, and people can leave voicemails on there. And that's another way. I try to be as accessible as I can. The problem is, I mean, in the early days of it, I would answer every email and every comment, and now it's just it's too big that I try to do as much as I can, but I finally accepted the fact that I cannot answer every comment.
you need to
It's
hire an
just too
assistant,
much.
Duane.
Yeah, exactly.
So what's the future hold for you? Is there anything you're working on right now related to DSD or Break the Cycle that you'd like to share?
I'm doing some collaborations with some different folks. The John Steinbeck from Brainwashing Children and Eric Carroll from Dad Talk Today. We have some stuff we're working on, trying to provide some extra resources for people. Basically, for me, I used to do a morning show. I'm hoping to kind of start that again, where I just do a live call-in type show on YouTube, and then turn that into a podcast. I'm hoping to get that restarted here shortly, but it's a lot of moving parts. And we were talking about maybe before the show it's a lot of work to put all this stuff together. It's been a heck of a journey for the last 5 years on this whole social media platform stuff, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like it's taken on a life of its own. People are really wanting more and reaching out. So thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule to talk with me today. And it's just been wonderful. I hope you consider maybe coming back on the podcast and
Absolutely.
doing this again. Would love to chat with you some more. So thanks so much, Duane.
Thanks for having me.